This is a very authentic piece, has piece from Carnival in Brazil. I've never been to a Carnival parade, can you believe it? So I lived in Brazil for 29 years, but I've never been to the parade. I saw the parades on TV and so on. But last week, I went to visit my friend Carlos. Carlos is here. And Carlos had a guest from Brazil. Her name is Georgina. Georgina is also here in the audience. Yeah, Georgina is a doctor. She's from Brazil, and she always travels to Brazil at this time of the year for the Carnival parade. And she was at Carlos' house to get that piece. And I was like, please let me wear it for the for the presentation. So it wasn't planned. I wasn't planning. I'm not going to wear it. It's too big. And so I'm very happy that you were here. DreamWeek is such an amazing event to help Americans and help other cultures to understand the journey of migrants to this country. It's wonderful to be able to be here. I'm here against all odds. I'll tell you in a minute why. So thanks for your support. Thanks for welcoming me to this community. I feel very privileged to be here. And look, after 20 years in the United States, how many beautiful and talented friends I have. Thanks so much for being here. That means a lot to me. So, this is 50 years ago. I'm going to be 50 in December. My name is Valdinei Lafayette da Cruz. I don't like to use the da Cruz. I like to use Lafayette because it sounds like chic, right? But it's real. It's my middle name. It's not a last name. It's not a family name. So my real name is Valdinei Lafayette. Nobody calls me Valdinei in Brazil. So when I came to America, I had an American supervisor, and he said, you know, it's so hard for me to remember how to say Valdinei, and I said, it's okay, nobody, even in Brazil. I think when my mom called me Valdinei, or my father called me Valdinei, I knew that I was in trouble. It was like, Valdinei, come here. So if you ever wonder how to pronounce it, I put it there, so Val, and we don't pronounce the L's the same way that Americans do. So it's not Val, it's Val. The D-I we pronounce as G, and Ney is the last part of the name. In Brazil, they call me Ney. This is my family. I am from the Amazon region. I was born in a tribe. This is my father, my mother, and my sister. And just kidding. I was like, I gotta do this. No, but you will understand a little bit later, they are actually part of my family. I'll let you know in a minute. No, but these are my parents. Something very interesting about my parents is, before I start this presentation, I want to let you know that I will focus on my throat is a little bit scratchy today. I will focus on education, resourcefulness, and transformation. So if anything else, I want you to leave with these three things in mind. My parents, because of life circumstances, only had 4 years of schooling. Does anybody here have a fourth grader at home? You do? That's pretty much all the education that my parents got. They migrated to São Paulo from the northeast of Brazil looking for better chances in life. One thing that was very clear to me from the beginning is, even though they were almost illiterate, they always value education. Education was the most important thing in my house. My mother is an avid reader. She can read in Portuguese. She doesn't write quite well. But she inculcates in us the necessity of striving for a better life through education. I am from São Paulo, Brazil, so I'm not from the Amazon area. São Paulo has over 20 million inhabitants, the greater area of São Paulo. Some of you have been there, so you know what I'm talking about. São Paulo is sometimes described as the New York of South America. And I am actually from, my ancestors come from different parts of the world. So as you can see there, I did an ancestry DNA test, not for these events, because I've always been curious about my ancestors. And so I am, if I can see it really well, 62% from Portugal, 12% African, 8% Native American, but what I mean is from South America. And a little bit of everybody else. So I'm the United Nations, as you can see. And so I do have Native American blood in my veins, and I'm very proud of it. This is a photo of me when I was on, I think, at the 2nd grade. My hair was very long. That was back in the 70s, right? And I remember everybody used to ask me all the time, are you a boy or a girl? That bothered me so much, but my father was in the hippies mentality, I guess, and didn't want my hair to get cut. I remember around this time, door-to-door salesperson left some encyclopedias with us. Do you remember the Britannica encyclopedia? How many volumes were it in the United States? It was beautiful to make your shelf, to decorate it with all those volumes. So I think in Brazil it was like about 18 volumes. And they left one with us as a sample. When I opened it, it was an English-Portuguese dictionary. And to tell you the truth, I don't remember that I knew anything about the English language. So I opened it, this English-Portuguese dictionary, and I was trying to translate my name into English. Imagine, I'm not Peter, because, Pedro. I'm not Paul from Paulo. I was like, how can I translate my name into English? And I couldn't, so I got a little bit frustrated about it. But that's the first memory that I have of hearing about the English language. And that sparked the desire to learn more. So when you go to Brazil and you go to public schools, I come from a middle-class family. My father is a welder, and my mom has always been a housewife. I remember having a middle-class lifestyle, but my parents could not afford to send me to a private school. So I went to a public school, and in public school you only have 45 minutes 2 times a week of English classes. It's not enough for you to learn the language. Most people, if they only go to private school, they will leave there, they will go to high school and go to college with a very basic knowledge of the English language. So there was a defining moment, but it's so funny how things happen, and that's what I'm going to talk about now, resourcefulness. Around this time, I was wearing braces, by the way. Some sales people, 3 guys, came to my school, and they were offering scholarships for see, I'm still learning how to speak English, a new private English school. And I got very excited about it because I wanted to learn how to speak English. So I got very excited because I was selected from my classroom for this scholarship opportunity. So I got home and I said, Mom, I got a scholarship to go to a private school to learn how to speak English. She said, let's go and check it out. So when we got there, it was a scam. It was a new school. They didn't have trained teachers. But the deal was, you buy the books, you pay for the books, and we'll give you your son an opportunity to learn how to speak English. That's all my parents could afford. So I started going to these classes, and I pretty much just sat there, I think for about a year, and I was doing my homework. The teachers barely speak any English. They pretty much want us to do the homework, get done with the course so they could replace students and get a chance to sell more books. But guess what? I learned a lot because I have been always very resourceful. So I started studying by myself, and then I learned a lot, but not enough to make me proficient in English. Going to a private school was very expensive. My parents could not afford to send me to a regular, a prestigious private school. So just to give you an idea, this is an article from one of the most important newspapers that we have in Brazil. This is dated March the 17th of 1990. How would you feel if the inflation of your country is 70% a month? So that means that something that you bought today for $10, when you go next month, it's 70% higher. And then you elect a new president, and 2 days after his election, all your savings in your checking account, every money that you have saved was confiscated. That happens to us. I remember the whole nation waking up in shock. I am sharing this story with you because I've never been through a war, and I've been to some of the discussions that we have had through the Dream Hour here. And I know there are so many more dramatic events in people's life. But every time I start getting anxious or I worry about what's going on, the wars, the administration, the political riots, and so on, I think about that day. So for 12 months, actually for 18 months, the governments kept our money. And then they released all the money that we had in 12 installments. People had saved money to go to college. People had saved money to pay for a wedding. Some people were going to pay for a surgery. Some people had paid for their, were planning to use that money to pay for a honeymoon. Everybody had to stop their plans. And there were some exceptions, and you could get your money out of the bank, but you had to justify. You had to have proof of, that you had a necessity. Every person was allowed to spend only $600. I was doing a research this week because I couldn't remember how much we were allowed to cash. So each person in the nation was allowed to have only $600 for that period. So that gives you a perspective on what life was in Brazil. Then I got a job in a bank in Avenida Paulista, one of the best locations that we have in São Paulo. And I had a great job at 15 years old. Because I could speak English, they allow me to talk to all the foreigners that came to São Paulo to buy traveler's checks. Remember the American Express traveler checks? So that's how people used to travel. So Americans would come and they would exchange for our currency, and then I was the one, there practicing my English. I wanted to. And we had people that had gone to the best schools, and they felt intimidated, and I was like, no, I want to talk to them, I want to learn. And every time I talk to an American or any other English-speaking person, I learned even more. When I started working for this bank, I started saving some money, and then I was able to afford to go to a private, reputable English school. So I went to one of the most prestigious schools that we have in São Paulo. It's called cultura inglesa, and I had a teacher from Wales. Now, yes, she was Welsh. And she wanted me to say, water, teacher. And I was like, I want to say water, teacher. And she got used to it. So like I said, I've always been very resourceful. So my parents made a very strategic move. Remember, we were from a middle-class family, and my sister got married, and we found out that her father-in-law had an apartment in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods of São Paulo. It was much smaller than our house. Our house was really big. But my mom, she knew that she needed to get me out of that neighborhood because I was already teaching some people how to speak English privately. My first student, I remember, I was charging $1 an hour. So my mom was like, okay, he wants to be an English teacher. Let me get him out of here because he's not going to survive charging people $1 an hour. So we moved to this very wealthy neighborhood, and I started teaching English. So I did not know I had this photo. So I was preparing this presentation. I was like, oh my God, I do have a photo. So I was in my early 20s there. I've always looked so much younger because I was so thin. Good days. And look at the words that I was teaching my students back then. Give up, bored, and to take pictures. Interesting how I got this job. So I moved to this wealthy neighborhood. We're talking about people, I remember one of my students, she had 13 farms. She had an airplane, a helicopter, a driver, a full-time maid, a cleaning lady, you know. It was a lifestyle that I was not used to. So I could speak some English, right? You know, I'm still learning how to speak English. And I was like, what if I go to this school in the neighborhoods and, you know, I apply for a job. I think I went to get my hair cut, and I saw an ad for this position. So didn't have an education, a college education, but I could speak some English. So I went for an interview, and guess what? So they gave me the job. I started working with children first, and I never do anything halfway. And I don't know how to describe this, but every time you give me something to do, I go the extra mile. It's almost like I'm trying to rescue people. I'm trying to rescue organizations. I'm trying to save the planet. This is always what I do. Terry knows that about me. So my father always taught me to be the best at everything that I do. So I was considered one of the best teachers. I wanted my students to learn how to speak English. So guess what they start doing? Flying me everywhere. Yeah, so I got a chance to experience that in my early 20s, opportunities to be, you know, from one place to the other with, you know, a private driver picking me up, and the pilot taking me to one of these farms, spending the weekends with these families because they were doing businesses with international partners. I remember this specific family, they flew me. This is not the real picture, by the way. This is just to give you a mental image. But this family took me to their farm, and because they were doing business with cattle ranch owner from Canada. So I was there to be doing all the translation. So I got to enjoy all the nice things. This was really nice for somebody that was in the early 20s and didn't have a college education, and it was really a great life. In 1996, I got a chance to come to the United States for the first time as an exchange student. So I came as an exchange student, and I went to San Francisco, and actually to Oakland. I stayed with a family in the Oakland Hills. And this is a photo that I took. That was on July the 4th, 1996. When I came to America, I felt so fascinated by the beauty. Everything was so clean. Sean always teases me. Sean is my life partner. He always teases me because I always say everything was so clean and organized compared to Brazil. I was so in love with America, but I had just a short stay in America, so I had to go back to Brazil. And when I went back to Brazil, I felt depressed. And I was depressed for 2 years because I wanted to live in America. I wanted to have the opportunity to live here, but I did not know how. And I knew I did not want to come illegally to this country. When I left the United States and I went back to Brazil, the internet was just arriving in Brazil. People did not even know what the internet was. I remember I went after an internet service provider. I got online and I started using a program that was called ICQ. Does anybody remember ICQ? And I was like, remember being resourceful again. I started to teach Portuguese to Americans through ICQ. And I had 14 students in the United States. And it was fun. I was learning English from them and they were learning Portuguese. And that's when I found love. I fell in love with one of my students. I got a chance to come to the United States to meet her. Don't get confused. This is a talk for another night, and it's probably 5 hours. I can't do that talk in 30 minutes. Well, long story short, we got married, and I moved to Vacaville in California. Vacaville, it's a little bit between San Francisco and Sacramento, close to Davis. I loved Vacaville. I could drive my car finally. São Paulo has over 20 million inhabitants. And I loved being in Vacaville because I could finally drive my car. So now I come from Brazil. I was teaching, right? Teaching English with an accent, believe it or not. Without a college education, what am I gonna do? So I applied, and my first job in Vacaville was, I was a bank teller. I was lucky because in the same branch, there was a lady from Turkey. And everybody loved this young lady from Turkey. So they was like, okay, maybe if we hire the Brazilian, everybody's gonna have the same experience. So they hired me. The funny thing though is, and I am not ashamed to recognize that I could not understand teenagers. And I could not understand elderly people because usually they are less likely to articulate their words when they talk. You know, teenagers, how they talk, right? I was used to the English that I hear in books, you know, I want to go to the car dealer. And I'm getting to American, they are saying, I want to go to that, you know, I wanna, you know. So I had a hard time, and same with elderly people, you know, sometimes when they're really old, they cannot articulate their words really well. But my coworkers were so helpful. I would say, I do not understand them. And somebody would come and help me, probably because of that lady. So amazing how Americans are always so welcoming and always willing to help. I want to tell you a funny story. So I remember I started going to Starbucks. And I've been in America for 20 years, but guess what? I always order the same thing. I always order a tall latte with 2 equals and whole milk. Always. But I started noticing that every time that I went through a Starbucks line, you know, the drive-thru, I would order a tall latte with 2 equals and whole milk, and they would give me oatmeal. That happens one time. It's like, okay, oatmeal, I love oatmeal, I'll have it. I'll pay a little bit more. I went through the drive-thru again. How can I help you today? Tall latte with 2 equals and whole milk. And I would get oatmeal again. I'm not ordering oatmeal. And then it happened a third time. So I soon realized that I need to work a little bit on my American accent. So instead of saying oatmeal, I was saying, I had to say whole milk to be understood. So they understood oatmeal. So I still have some issues. I cannot talk to Siri. I cannot talk to Alexa. Alexa does not understand me. Sean makes so much fun of me because I have to tell Alexa, she's like, did you say? And I have to repeat the same thing over and over again. They need to come up with an Alexa that understands accents, don't you think? So in Vacaville, I was working as a bank teller. Then I got a nice job as an office manager. I was making a good salary, so I decided to go to community college. And I started taking graphic design. So I'm reinventing myself again. I've always had a passion for graphic design, so I started going to community college. This is the cover of a book that I designed during my classes, and it's actually published. It's on Amazon right now. However, disclaimer, the author decided to go with another cover because I divorced her. I just recently found out that it's still there, but it's another cover anyway. So with divorce in 2009, we were married for 10 years. I had an opportunity to transform myself again. And I always knew that I wasn't true to myself. So I got a chance to meet somebody that was working for USAA. USAA was closing their Sacramento office. And we were given the opportunity to move to 2 locations, either Colorado or San Antonio. And I knew coming from Brazil, I come from a very warm weather, that I couldn't live in Colorado. So I decided to come to San Antonio. USA paid for all my expenses. So it was really amazing. We did a calculation, combined our expenses were around $70,000 back then. So that's how I ended up in San Antonio. So this photo I actually took on July the 4th, 2009. When I got here, it was one of the driest summers that we have ever had. And we had 55 days in a row where the temperature was above 100 degrees, day and night. And I remember that I was living on the 12th floor of this high-riser on Jackson Keller. And I was like, why did they build a city here? Why did they build a city in the desert? This is a desert. And I would ask people like, does it rain here? And some people would say, yes, wait until September and October. It's going to start raining again. What a relief. Start working for USA. So I came, USA paid for my expenses, not because I was a USA employee, but because I was in a relationship with an employee. But then I got a job to work for USA. Thanks Susan for being here. She's a co-worker from USA. I was there for 7 years in marketing. USA paid for my education. So I decided to take marketing. Then I took some graphic design classes and I started doing photography. So one thing leads to another. USA paid for all my education during the time that I was there. But then I found out that when you go to marketing classes, I was going to UTSA, that you're learning numbers, and I wanted to be more creative. So then I decided to go with psychology. So then I studied psychology at the University of Incarnate Word. Psychology helped me to put everything together, So it's been amazing. While I was working for USAA and studying psychology, a publisher, saw my work, asking me to send him some photos, and an article was published in a local publication. So this was the first article about my work. And these are some of the photos that were published. You know that guy over there? That photo was liked and published more than 1,000 times because he tagged the company that make that cross. I guess they were reposting and liking because of the cross, right? Some of other photos that I did. I did a few covers for SA Monthly magazine. Got a chance to photograph some local celebrities like Kimberly Crawford. Actually, it was in Carlos' house, and Carlos is here. I got a chance to travel to France. I photographed Giovanna de Zurita there in front of the Eiffel Tower. Pretty soon, I got at the attention of some art dealers. Adriana Cisneros with Arts Legacy saw my work, invited me to do my first exhibition, and we decided to show some of the work, the photos that I had taken during my international trips. Sean, my life partner, loves traveling, so I get a chance to go to some real cool places. In fact, we're going to Australia and New Zealand now in March. And I was like, I'm sorry? We'll talk about it. So these are some of the photos that I've captured during my trips. This is in Brazil. This is probably in the Netherlands. And I worked for this local publication for about 3 years, and I learned so much. I tell people that I learned in 3 years working for this local publication more than working 30 years elsewhere. But I'm outgrowing photography, and I got a taste for publishing publications, so I was invited to become part of the boards of directors of Maestro Entrepreneur Center. It's an amazing center here in San Antonio that it's helping small business owners. And thank you. And Maestro, they knew that I had this passion for publications, so they invited me to become the editor-in-chief of the new Maestro magazine. It was just really launched now in November. It's been a wonderful experience. Maestro magazine has been created to educate small business owners to take their businesses to the next level. There is a new issue coming up now in March. Because of my connections with the other publication, I got a chance to meet a very successful business owner here in San Antonio, and she has a passion for fashion and beauty, and I said, let's create a magazine and that is going to be inspiring to other people. I got tired of the pay-to-play business model of some publications, so we are now releasing in February the 15th the new Epic magazine. I'm also the editor-in-chief. Epic magazine will be a publication to inspire other people. So I'm always looking for inspirational stories to create editorials for this new publication. Then just recently, as in November, I was contacted by a former coworker, and she said, you know, Providence High School is a Catholic school all for girls, middle school and high school students. My daughter attends Providence, and they are looking for a marketing communications director. And I think you are the right person for the position. I was not looking for a job. So I decided to go for the job interview. It seems to me they have an interesting mission. And I've been working with Providence now since November. It's been a great experience. The nice thing about it is that I can continue doing my work for Maestro as the board of directors, as the editor-in-chief of Maestro magazine, and working with Epic magazine. If you have daughters and they are middle school or high school students and you are looking for one of the best private educations, Providence is right there downtown. Our class of 2019 got over $250,000 in scholarships opportunities. I think we had about 35 students graduating in 2019. So consider Providence. That's my sales pitch for tonight. I started reading a book recently and I came across this, and this had a defining moment for me, and it's very appropriate to the discussion that we have tonight. So there we go. When we think that something is going to bring us some pleasure, we don't know what's really going to happen. When we think something is going to give us misery, we don't know. When there is a big disappointment, we don't know if that's the end of the story. It may just be the beginning of a great adventure. I read somewhere about a family who had only one son. They were very poor. This son was extremely precious to them, and the only thing that mattered to this family was that he bring them some financial support and prestige. Then he was thrown from a horse and crippled. It seems like the end of their lives. 2 weeks after that, the army came into the village and took away all the healthy, strong men to fight in the war. And this young man was allowed to stay behind and take care of his family. Life is like that. We don't know anything. We call something bad, we call it good, but really, we just don't know. Thank you.